You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Welcome, everyone, to Friends Talking Nerdy. That is the 299th time I have said that.
I can't believe it. Does it feel like you've said it 299 times?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm definitely aware of the long history of shows that we do have. You know, some highs, some lows, some in between. But on the other hand, it feels just like yesterday that I started doing this. And, you know, some people are probably listening and like, hey, great evolution, pal. No. But that's what I love about the podcasting, though. Just the fact that, you know, there's always something new to learn. You know, I want this show to be a success, but if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, like I'm still very much, you know, ecstatically happy with the success I've had with the show.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a lot of success with the show, I guess. You know, you've been building your audience for 299 episodes so far. Mm-hmm. So, you have a lot to show for the show.
Yeah, we did recently get a shout out. We had enough people listen to our show that we popped up, last I checked, at number 22 on the Good Pod's Mental Health Indie Podcast countdown list. So.
That is awesome. Yeah, so you're getting a lot of play in the mental health category.
Yes. I mean, I figured with how everything at the end of the day kind of turns into, you know, the story of us, everybody that's behind the microphone at some point on the show. It's like, it's why not acknowledge that a lot of, you know, what we talk about, even if it is something like pop culture, has to do with mental health in some way, shape, or form. Because, you know, me talking about wrestling makes me happy. You know, and it's a silly thing, and I'll be the first to admit that, but it's still an important mental health thing for me. It's a getaway. It's a little thing I can watch for a couple of hours and come away happy at the end of it, you know?
Yeah, that's so great that you have things like that. I mean, I feel that way, like, about a good concert or a hike. I don't know that there's anything all that compelling about television for me. Do you know what I mean? Like you get really excited about WrestleMania, and I get really excited about Burning Man. And that's fine, as long as you feel excited about something.
You just described like an 80s sitcom. You know? What happens when
somebody into Burning Man moves in with somebody into wrestling? You end up with the Thunderdome at Burning Man, which is a cage match ring, very similar to what you saw in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Mm-hmm. And then people fight inside. And it's like real fighting.
Okay. The things you learn, but definitely, you know, I think initially I had an idea for something special for episode 300, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to do a regular damn episode because that's what stands out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that dedication to doing the podcast as it is.
Indeed. Now, having said that, I will throw it out there. If there is anybody listening that wants to leave a voice message, we will be glad to play any sort of appropriate voice messages at the start of the show. You know, if you got something nice you want to say or something like that, we'll make you podcast famous.
Yeah, we will. And, you know, we love hearing from the listeners.
Indeed. We definitely do. I think that may be the first indeed for this episode.
Excellent. Drink.
All right. How has your week been?
My week has been excellent. It's spring break. So I did not go anywhere, do anything for spring break. Last year I had a really great trip over spring break. But this year, I'm just hanging out in Portland. Not really doing a staycation. I'm more doing like irresponsible, like spending the day doing whatever I want as opposed to working. And that's been really nice. I did that yesterday and today. I'm going to work more. I worked on Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to work on Friday.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Otherwise, the weather has been better here in Portland, so been trying to get out, do some walking, see what's going on in the neighborhood. We've got the crows coming back here to the Fives to see Tim since he returned, because Tim feeds them and I never fed them, so...
Yeah, I've even got one, and I showed you the picture of it, that when I was leaving the apartment, walking down the sidewalk, one was standing in front of your car, or next to your car. And I ended up stopping, and then this crow ended up looking at me, cawing for about 5 seconds, and then just walked off on its own and flew away. You know, so, and I think that same crow that's also the same crow that came up on the railing on your deck and again looked into the window at me and cawed, and also came to the railing when you were playing guitar once.
I love corvids so much. They're so cool. And I usually get up before dawn. And then I usually take a nap later, but usually get up before dawn because I like to watch dawn because I have a wonderful east-facing view. And so you can hear the crows. So the crows here in Portland all nest in downtown. And so they go downtown when the sun goes down. And then they come back out into the neighborhoods when the sun comes up. And so you can hear, they're so loud when they're dispersing. They're just like, caw, caw, caw. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to work now, Bob.
I'm gonna go find a hot dog.
Yeah, see?
It's Spofford.
It has definitely been fun seeing them and interacting with them in ways too. It's you know, and I think I mentioned it before. I mean, you don't want to get too comfortable with a wild animal because you don't want to give that animal expectations that another human being is going to act the same way you are. But doing stuff like this, I think, is cool, and they know that humans are there in their world. So on occasion, you know, tossing a little bit of extra snacks out there for them to get, you know, a little extra something they may not have had before, I think is a wonderful thing to do. And if they acknowledge you, even better.
Oh, yeah. You know, people have lots of stories about crows bringing them gifts and stuff.
That's what I'm waiting for. Cheap fucks.
Cheap what?
Cheap fucks.
Oh, I thought you were waiting for cheap fucks.
Well, yeah. At my tax bracket, you know.
It's got to be pretty cheap.
Anyway. We're okay here, folks. My week, just a lot more writing. In fact, we do have a crow friend that just popped up on the railing right now.
Hey, we do have a crow friend. Hi, friend.
Yeah. We'll keep you up to date here, folks, on the Friends Talking Nerdy News Network. Got a lot more writing in. Got a job interview in under my belt already. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But it, you know, I think that went well, and hopefully I'll be making some regular cash here very, very soon because I fucking need it.
We all do, right? We all need regular cash.
Yeah, the podcast here isn't paying the bills quite yet, you know.
Nope.
Yeah, it reminds me that, anytime anybody, you know, asked about the podcast in, like, a job interview, I'm always reminded of this joke that Wanda Sykes made about being offered a role as a nanny on TV who won the lottery but still went to work as a nanny. And she said, shit, if I found out I was a millionaire now, I'd leave before I finished this joke.
Right. Take the money and run, as they say.
Damn right. But anyway, this week, we have some interesting news about social media. TikTok is facing a ban by Congress. There were some hearings with the TikTok CEO that were held in front of a joint session of a House committee. And this is one time where Republicans and Democrats, stood hand in hand together, facing off an enemy of America, folks, here. A little hyperbolic on that, folks, but I'm always suspicious when they're this in step here, because usually it doesn't take much to dig a little deeper, but digging just a little deeper, you find out the whys and why issues like this show that you can't hold allegiance to one party just because you think that party is doing good things. You have to hold everybody in power's feet to the fire.
Yep. Absolutely. And so for our listeners who aren't familiar,
mostly our age people, but go ahead.
Right. TikTok is a social media platform that allows you to make videos very easily. They're short videos, and then you post them, and everybody can see them and comment on them, like them, etc. So, it's owned by a Chinese company.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the opposition, I think, is not only America, fuck yeah, but it's also xenophobic and racist. So there's this underlying unity in a lot of our political institutions around operating a system that perniciously discriminates against people who are not white, not cis, and not men.
Yeah, because, it should go without saying, as a social media company, that there are, I am sure, very legitimate security concerns as to why that particular app doesn't need to be on, like, a government-issued phone, for instance, a government-issued computer. I am all for sitting back and finding out what those exploits are that could potentially lead to a danger. I mean, I think as a responsible person, you have to assume that other people would ask for the same thing. But what is scaring me is that, they think that because this company is based in China, and by the way, folks, TikTok is banned in China, because they won't go along with some of the censorship demands that other governments, including the United States, ask for from social media companies.
Yeah. And boy, social media has really come a long way from when we were kids.
What would you say is your first memory of a social media site?
I think Usenet. Because I was using that on a DOS computer. So
I think you should give a background. You probably had access to some of this stuff because you were a military family, right?
No.
No?
I mean, I'm talking about 1997.
I thought DOS was like 80s or something like that.
I had a really cheap old computer.
Okay.
I was a college student. I didn't have any money.
Whatever works. I mean, I'm not bad-mouthing it. I mean, I would have been...
I think it was an Acer, and it was a laptop, and it weighed about 20 pounds.
Oof. Those were the days.
Those were the days. But that was the first thing. Usenet was the first thing where I met people from all over the world who wanted to talk about similar topics. And I actually was internet friends with somebody from Portland when I lived in Tennessee that I met through Usenet. Sort of a premonition, because I didn't think I would go to Portland at that point. Mm-hmm. What about you?
My introduction, like I remember my freshman year of college, the first time I went around, attempting for a theater degree. After a show, we went to a cast member's house and, lots of beer flowing around. It was great. But, near the end of the night, the people that were still up were at a computer on an AOL chat room pretending to be a girl. That's what people did to entertain themselves back in the day. They would try to pretend to be a girl to get some unwitting gentleman out there that's a little lonely to do stupid stuff.
Yeah, I've never done that.
I guess I'm a horrible human being.
I mean, I've never pretended to be a dude, and that's a kind of interesting thing to try.
I mean, I had
See if I've got
alcohol.
play in
Well,
my chatting.
Why not? You know, I mean, ChatGPT can help you out.
Seriously, ChatGPT is going to change everything.
But for me, though, social media didn't become sort of a regular thing until Facebook. I mean, in MySpace, I did have a MySpace page, but I was never a daily person there. I never really got it. But Facebook was the first time to where, you know, I was there checking every day and checking the status and making this friend, and, you know, not using it in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's wild that that's your first social media was Facebook, you know.
My first love. Yeah.
I mean, I followed it all. So there was Usenet, then there were, you know, other chat rooms, AOL chat rooms or whatever, and like chat rooms was the thing. And people didn't have profiles, they just had names, and you didn't know who you were talking to, and you're just like chatting about topics. It was the first time that you could kind of be anonymous, but communicate with other people, except by sending anonymous letters, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting about chat rooms. And then when I moved to Portland, there's a wonderful woman named Stacey Bias who used to live in Portland, and she created this website called Technodyke. And Technodyke had chat rooms, it had classifieds, it had like a whole social media universe. It never got bought, but I think it could have been purchased. But it was the early 2000s, and it was a dyke focused website, and that wasn't too popular back then, you know.
Yeah.
And then MySpace, and then Facebook, and now Twitter, and Instagram, and I use Pinterest, and now TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried some of the other ones. I mean, I was on Twitter for a while, for about over a decade, but ended up finally cutting that off at the knees. And more, I'm just finding that despite the benefits that social media can offer, and there are definitely some, being able to, you know, keep in touch with, like, my friend Lisa, for instance. You know, I mean, my primary communication with her is via Facebook Messenger. Could I get her phone number and text her regularly? Sure, but this works. And being able to still have that link, you know, to be able to talk to people like her and others is definitely valuable. But I'm also seeing the danger of putting everything out there, because, you know, you could just put out a dumbass comment and the wrong person, you know, hits a resend or a retweet or something like that, and you got the world, you know, looking at something that you wrote and not taking into account, you know, the benefit of the doubt, because they may know you.
They may know you?
You know, when you know people, if you know a friend of yours and they make a certain joke in a certain way, you know them enough to know what their intention is. The people that you do not know, of course, don't know that intention.
Right.
You know, it's that's why locker room talk can be tricky, because I think, you know, stuff like conversations that friends can have. I mean, I think everybody at some point has had what they would consider a bawdy conversation with a friend, that they wouldn't necessarily tell to other people, but they knew the intent of the friend. They knew that they could. You get what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one thing that I talk about with friends, as like, you know, you talk about dating and people you're attracted to and stuff, and that you would never have that conversation in front of those people.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, but it's made me think this week because of, what's going on with TikTok, what the continuing story of what's happening at Twitter with that company going down the drain, but it made me think about the pros and cons of social media because, as I mentioned, there are benefits to social media that I definitely am thankful for that are still in my life and getting better as the years go on. But, I think, and you had mentioned it on a talk that we had earlier before we recorded, about how because social media is so new, we don't know all of the negatives or the positives as of yet because we're still in the very early stages of recording its impact.
Exactly. So, I sort of saw it as we don't know all of the cons because we don't know what the long-term effect of social media will be. But, you're right. I'm assuming that it'll be negative. But what if it actually is very positive and people are more connected and people are more connected with their families and friends, and wouldn't that improve mental health? And should we be promoting social media? And I think that the jury is just still out on those things.
Definitely agreed. So that's why we wanted to have this pro-con conversation here now, how we normally do it, as I'm sure you've listened to a number of those episodes the Reverend Tracy and I have done. We will, thanks to an article off of procon.org, which will be in the show description, so you'll be able to go and check it out for yourselves. And we determined this before the show started. I will be reading all the pros. You will be reading all the cons, and we'll bounce back and forth. So I will start off with the first pro, then you will go with the first con. I will read what they have to say, give my thoughts, you will have a retort, and then we will go to the con.
Okay, sounds great.
Sounds good. Sounds like I could have hyped that up like I was Wink Martindale and tic-tac-toe explaining like the final game or something, but
right.
I still have to get my game show voice. Hi everybody.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
We are ready.
All right. Social media, is it good for society? The pros and the cons. Pro number 1, social media promotes community that can translate into or supplement offline relationships. Using social media, people can have friends with similar interests in multiple cities, states, and countries. Closer to home, social media can help people find each other in a busy world, from mom groups and soccer leagues to book clubs and historical reenactment groups. Most young people will say that social media and networked games are a lifeline to supportive connections with friends and loved ones. This was critical during the COVID-19 pandemic when schools and sports were off limits. Social media can also be a way for young people to connect with others with shared interests and identities, which can be a lifeline for youth with marginalized or stigmatized identities such as LGBTQ+ youth or racial and religious minority youth, explains Mizuko Ito, professor of information and computer sciences at UC Irving. And the opposite is also true. While social media does not substitute for in-person contact, relationships that might previously have gone dormant now persist over time thanks to online sources. As such, social media users tend to report that they have access to more social support and have lower psychological distress, offered Keith Hampton, professor of media and information at Michigan State University. Yeah! Studies have shown that not only does social media participation not completely obliterate in-person friendships as once feared, but that online relationships are a key supplement that add to one's well-being. People are able to share more of their lives with friends and family and may receive crucial support from groups they do not have an offline life. 80% of teens feel more connected to friends, 67% felt they had people to support them, and 58% felt more accepted because of social media. Traditional barriers to friendships are reduced or completely removed for adults who are no longer in school or do not have a pool of coworkers, particularly when working from home. Shy, introverted, or socially reticent people can use social media to reach out to potential friends with lowered barriers and risks. Social media can also promote school and work communities. The platforms forums allow students and parents to connect to each other, as well as teachers and other school staff outside of school hours to establish relationships, as well as connect with outside community members and experts for internships, interviews, and other opportunities for work. Employees can connect with remote coworkers and other companies for what used to be water cooler chats, as well as global project collaboration, advice, and career networking. All true. I've again spoken about my friends that I've had thanks to online sources like, Lisa Chilton, for instance. That's a person I've known for almost 20 years now. And primarily it has been through the use of social media sites that, I've kept up with her life, she's kept up with my life, and we kept up with each other.
Yeah, I think it can be a good beginning of relationships, friendships, etc. You sort of get to know someone. Like the article said, it reduces the barrier for people who are shy or socially reticent. I love that, socially reticent. It's kind of like you can feel people out and like pick the ones that are really interesting to you.
As a socially reticent person, yeah. It's social media can allow you to put up more of a front, front is maybe not the best word, but, put up a confidence, more confident version of you. If that makes more sense, because, I do find, especially, when it comes to like difficult stuff, a lot of times it's much easier for me to write stuff out anyway. So, having social media as a tool, has allowed me to get closer to people, online. Just have to figure out the whole social thing in person deal,
Right. Yeah. And I'm probably like a mixture of the two. I'm not extremely extroverted. And I'm somewhat socially reticent. And so it makes it useful to have online options.
Indeed. And, it as well, it does allow people to, I think, join up and find out that there are groups of people that think like them, that feel like them, and those people can be from all walks of life too. I think the important thing about social media, and I think about that first thing, is that it's shown how small the world really is. And what do I mean by that? When like, I think I mentioned this example last week, but, and I have family that live in rural areas. If you were living in a rural area and only get your news scattershot here and there, thanks to, lack of broadband in the area and whatnot, outside of your immediate area can seem a little scary, but having outlets to the outside world can definitely make you say, yeah, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I agree completely. You and I were not young people with social media. And when you think about the pandemic, it really did, as the article mentioned, it really allowed some level of social interaction when there wasn't an option for in-person interaction.
Yep, like Joe and the Possum Posse had their weekly concerts that they held online. That was fun to be able to, sit and watch those concerts when we had the opportunity. And yeah, there were like local events in the area during the pandemic that, used Facebook, for instance, to, advertise, hey, we're having an outdoor disco,
Right.
Stuff like that. So,
yeah.
All right. What is the first con?
So, the first con we have is that social media promotes cyberbullying that spills into offline life. Cyberbullying is the electronic posting of mean-spirited messages about a person, such as a student, often done anonymously. Specific types of cyberbullying include but are not limited to flaming, which is online arguments with personal attacks, outing, revealing someone's sexual orientation without permission, trolling, being antagonistic and starting arguments, and doxing, which is revealing private information without permission. 66% of teens believe social media companies are not doing enough to curb cyberbullying, and 33% of kids have deleted a social media account to avoid cyberbullying. The Pew Research Center found 59% of American teens had been bullied online, including offensive name-calling, 42%, false rumors, 32%, unsolicited receipt of explicit images, 25%, someone other than a parent constantly asking where they are, who they are with, or what they are doing, 21%, physical threats, 18%, and non-consensual sharing of explicit images of the teen, 7%. However, not only teens engage in cyberbullying or experiencing the effects. Kids as young as 10 face cyberbullying, specifically racist attacks globally. And 41% of American adults reported being harassed online, ranging from offensive name-calling, 31%, to stalking, 11%. Adults were most likely to be targeted for political views, 50%, their gender, 33%, race or ethnicity, 29%, religion, 19%, and sexual orientation, 16%. 75% of the adults who had been cyberbullied indicated the harassment happened on social media. The harms carry over into offline life. People under the age of 25 who were cyberbullied were more than twice as likely to self-harm and enact suicidal behavior than non-victims. Cyberbullying victims of any age are subject to mental, emotional, and physical harm, including upset, embarrassment, anxiety, shame, depression, loss of sleep, headaches, and stomach aches. Victims may be less productive or skip school and work. Some may turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with the distress. Cyberbullying can also have large-scale global implications. Amnesty International accused Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, among others, of fueling the Rohingya massacres in Myanmar. The organization stated the mass dissemination of messages that advocated hatred, inciting violence and discrimination against the Rohingya, as well as other dehumanizing and discriminatory anti-Rohingya content, poured fuel on the fire of long-standing discrimination and substantially increased the risk of an outbreak of mass violence. Okay, so here we're dealing with the con of cyberbullying. This was a big thing of Melania Trump's, and therefore is certainly a bad idea, whatever Melania thought. But cyberbullying is a problem. Just like bullying at school before there was the internet. And if you think about it, how much easier it is to cyberbully than it was to bully. Like, to bully, you had to be tough, right? You had to create a reasonable threat, right, to really be a bully. And now you don't have to do that. You can just be behind a computer and attack whoever you want with impunity. You can be anonymous and hurt people.
And I think the worst thing here is the pile-on effect that the internet tends to fuel in a lot of ways, thanks to social media. Because you do have situations to where back in our day, people would have been normally teased, but not everybody would have joined in with a particular shot. They would have probably walked by, looking off in another direction, or said something under their breath of, they shouldn't say that, but the internet social media has allowed people and kind of expects people to, as the article referred to, troll, to, come back with an angry response. And, especially when you're tearing somebody down, it's easy to let that, flame get higher and higher. And it doesn't matter if that person in question has traits that deserve to be called out. I'm not suggesting that people that, royally fuck up shouldn't suffer the social consequences of that. But, I think people do have to acknowledge that social media can help, make a situation much worse in a real quick period of time.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about viralness, anything can go viral at any time. And when that happens, the harm from something can be multiplied and extended to a lot of people where that was not the case with bullying before social media.
Yeah, and I think too, it would still, for like school kids that create like a secret Facebook group, like Lady Gaga. Before she was famous, she had a Facebook group of her college friends stating, her real name, will never be famous. Look what happened to her. But in that particular case, a group of her, fellow students got together and did that, whereas in the past, maybe they would have gossiped, but they wouldn't have taken those extra steps and they wouldn't have piled on and piled on. I think it's given people more tools to more easily spew the hate that may have been there in the first place. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say, like social media entraps people, but I think it just gives them a lot more. It gives them what they think is a lot more freedom to speak their mind and to add on to the pile than they normally would have if they didn't have that tool.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. All right. Shall I go on to the next one?
Sure.
All right. Pro number 2, social media encourages civic and political responsibility. Many of today's youth take to digital spaces to develop their civic identities and the express political stances in creative ways. There we go. Someone has the allergies. Claiming agency that may not be afforded to them in traditional civic spaces. The key difference between civic engagement by youth today and older, more traditional forms of action is the availability of digital technology, which provides a low barrier to entry canvas for young people to create content that is potentially vastly scalable, according to a 2020 UNICEF report. Social media creates a more equitable point of entry and space for continued civic and political activity than traditional spaces. This easy access contributes to a sense of socio-political empowerment, which in turn makes young people more likely to participate in offline political activities, including voting. Carla, a self-identified Latina young person, explained, "I feel like it's my duty that I've come from a heritage of people that don't have a voice, don't have the opportunity to say something. It's my duty to be like, this is wrong, and hopefully that inspires someone else to be like, oh, she's right, or oh, he's right. I want to be a part of that, and so that's why I do it. We're a generation where we have a voice." Meanwhile, many young people are taking responsibility to properly vet information they share. Jeremy noted, "I found myself becoming much more active during an election to some degree in terms of reposting different pieces of information that I try to vet as much as possible. I find myself once or twice having to delete stories because of the information ended up being incorrect, and I felt like it was my obligation to immediately take it down. Social media allows for political activists to fundraise, partner with influencers to boost the message, promote events including marches, share stories, and spread awareness of their chosen issues. For example, social media use fueled political protests including the Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter, Love Wins, Me Too, and Occupy Wall Street. Presidents Obama and Trump have both used social media to an unprecedented degree to communicate with both U.S. citizens and people abroad. Social media not only enables politicians to directly communicate with the citizens, but also encourages political participation of citizens in the form of feedback via comments on social networking sites, according to researchers. I doubt that last one. But yes, I mean, the evidence is out there. I mean, the Gen Z, the young folks in their early 20s are voting in numbers that, they never did in our generation at all.
Yeah, and I think social media is engaging in that way.
And I think that is the big reason why TikTok, with the fact they have over 150 million users of their particular app, a lot of the Gen Z folks are getting their news from TikTok.
Wow.
And I think that is something that has scared a number of both Republican and Democratic politicians alike, because the news that you see on CNN or NBC or CBS or anything like that is not wrong, but a lot of times it is being presented in a way that the government particularly wants you to. It can be reformatted propaganda, I guess. I mean, I don't have a more fancy way of saying that, but and propaganda in and of itself too is also not necessarily wrong. I'm scaling a tightrope here, folks, but you do have to accept that there is more to the world than what you're being fed. That does mean, however, as the pro here did say, it is very vitally 100% important to vet your sources. And if you ever, as a social media user, post an article that turns out to have incorrect information, then by all means do your best to not only take down the old article and repost a new one, but publicly acknowledge it too. But again, the young folks are, I think, in a lot of ways using social media in the right way, and I think the numbers are starting to show that.
Well, that dovetails really nicely with the next con, but I think for networking, social media is really necessary. So everybody has LinkedIn pages to communicate about themselves and their resumes. And that kind of community can be really, really important for people to be successful.
Indeed.
So,
second time, folks.
Drink. So, let's move on to the next con, because it does dovetail with what you were just talking about, which is that social media encourages the spread of misinformation. So, social media users frequently collect in echo chambers, which are generally figurative, but sometimes literal places where similarities among people greatly outnumber differences. Users may share biases, political affiliations, gender, race, sexual orientation, income, employment status, or any number of other demographic identifiers. Echo chambers allow misinformation to flourish because users are less likely to fact-check a post by someone with who they identify and want to agree. Outside of an echo chamber, someone is more likely to fact-check and to stem the misinformation before it goes viral. Further, within an echo chamber, extreme misinformation is more likely to go viral to encourage engagement on the social media platform among the echo chamber's participants. Social media platforms exploit and manipulate the impulse for like-minded people to gather by programming algorithms to show more information of the same vein, and by not controlling the bots and trolls that spread misinformation. Human biases play an important role. Since we're more likely to react to content that taps into our existing grievances and beliefs, inflammatory tweets will generate quick engagement. It's only after that engagement happens that the technical side kicks in. If a tweet is retweeted, favorited, or replied to by enough of its first viewers, the newsfeed algorithm will show it to more users, at which point it will tap into the biases of those users too, prompting even more engagement, and so on. At its worst, this cycle can turn social media into a kind of confirmation bias machine, one perfectly tailored for the spread of misinformation, explained Chris Meserole, Director of Research for the Brookings Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology Initiative. According to a 2022 study, disaster, health, and politics emerged as the three domains where misinformation on social media can cause severe harm, often leading to casualties or even irreversible effects. For example, misinformation in these areas has higher potential to exacerbate the existing crisis in society. Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus noted about the COVID-19 pandemic, "We are not just fighting an epidemic, we are fighting an infodemic," referring to the misinformation populating social media feeds about the virus. The same might be said of any number of topics populating social media feeds. I really see this as probably the number one con of social media is the echo chamber effect, which is that I'm friends with all my friends in real life, right? And they're people who are like me and have similar beliefs to me. And so the people I'm friends with are going to be posting news that is relevant to the things that I care about because we care about the same things. Depending on the community, that can be a great thing or it can be an echo chamber. And really, to avoid being in the echo chamber, you've got to have a diversity of thought. And this is like a big thing in academia, is that you've got to have conservative viewpoints represented at the same time that you have liberal viewpoints in some place like a college, because people need to work out for themselves what they believe and what they think about things like that. So, the echo chamber doesn't help people figure out how they feel about things. It just galvanizes people in their existing, usually knee-jerk opinion.
Yeah, it's not good when you have a bunch of people whose knowledge on politics is based on what they read in the newspaper, and I include myself in that group. I definitely agree. And, I think everybody is guilty in some way, shape, or form of, at times not even realizing in terms of getting stuck into that echo chamber. It's something I do fight myself. There is a podcast that I do listen to out there that I've talked about on the show before, White Flag with Joe Walsh. He was a former Tea Party congressman that in 2016 came out and said, I'm not changing my beliefs, but Trump is a scumbag and he's wrong. And what I like about what he's doing on this show right now is that he's still very much a conservative, but he's having respectful back and forths with people on topics he disagreed with. He had a great interview with David Hogg, the youth, the young kid who survived one of the shootings in Florida, one of the school shootings in Florida, and is now an anti-gun activist. Had a great back and forth conversation to where Mr. Walsh was able to talk about, his side on what he believed. David Hogg talked about his side, and, they shot for being able to have that conversation. And I think more of that needs to be encouraged. But again, it takes you as a listener in today's media landscape to take that time to get over the instant cringe, because there are, this is not trying to what do they call it, whataboutism or something like that, or just
what about this, what about that?
It's like I'm acknowledging that there is still very much a problem, but it's like with this, it's like you got to there are people with principles out there that have political beliefs you disagree with. That is just a fact. But they are still principled, and you can still have that conversation. And it's important to be discerning enough to not have your instant reaction of they're saying something I disagree with make you turn away from that voice, because they could be giving you another perspective that makes your knowledge better.
Right, exactly. I mean, you can learn a lot from listening to the arguments of the other side.
Yes, it was like I was writing a discussion post on a college web board. I said, anyway.
Yeah, once you've done a college web board, you'll never go back.
Anyway. Indeed. Number 3, folks. All right, so how about I go on with the last pro here?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, social media bolsters inclusivity and diversity on and offline. Social media brings everyone together into one online space. With tools including hashtags and groups, people from diverse backgrounds who have similar identities, interests, or goals can find each other easily. For instance, social media sites offer critical opportunities for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, and other sexual and/or gender minority youth to enhance well-being through exploring their identities, accessing resources, and connecting with peers. Similarly, people can explore people, cultures, and ideas with which they are unfamiliar without judgment from their offline communities. Pew Research Center found that in a survey of adults in 11 nations across 4 global regions, in many key respects, smartphone users, and especially those who use social media, are more regularly exposed to people who have different backgrounds. For example, in Lebanon, social media users are 76% more likely to interact with people of different religious groups, 58% more likely to interact with people of different races and ethnic groups, 68% more likely to interact with people of different political parties, and 81% more likely to interact with people of different income levels than Lebanese people who do not use social media. Further, many companies extend their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies to online spaces, allowing not only employees but also diverse customers, clients, and others to be included equitably. For example, bilingual social media content has emerged as a tool to increase diversity and rights for minority groups. On Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and other social platforms, organizations such as Tide Pods by Unilever have released bilingual images that support diverse communities. Nonprofits are currently producing bilingual content across the globe to increase equality further internationally. Bilingual social media content is now becoming a marketing tool for organizations to learn about other cultures worldwide. It can help them connect with their followers by using images that promote acceptance and understanding of cultural diversity, according to Maria Ochoa, founder and CEO of Emprender Creative. Creating a diverse online space can translate into a diverse work environment as employees and customers of diverse backgrounds feel included and in turn interact with the company. Again, all true. I mean, like, you could probably speak on this a lot more than I can, but I think, what they mentioned at the top, the spaces that it gives just younger people, especially in the LGBTQ community, to be able to have those important relationships with people to help walk them through steps that, they wouldn't have gotten when we were kids.
Right. I mean, like I mentioned, Technodyke was the first social media platform specific to Portland that I joined right when I moved to Portland. I met a lot of people, and if you're in a minority, it can be difficult to meet people unless you can identify groups that are similar to you and hang out with those people. And I think that creates space for ethnic, sexual, gender, racial minorities to be able to solidify their political messages and be more effective in trying to open up the rest of the world to themselves.
Yeah, and, the more people see what people really are, then you're going to have less, think about in war. I mean, I remember when the Afghanistan war first started, or it was the Iraq war, and how this one kid at work was like, those Iraqis they're all bad, and I'm like, but no, they're not. Like, we have an issue with their government, and I went based on the info I knew at the time, folks. We know a lot more, but it was an issue we had with their government. Their soldiers are just that. They're soldiers, who come from families just like our soldiers come from families. It's like the internet allows you that ability to see other people and see that they are in fact just like you. Just because life dealt them the dominoes, or the cards that they have, that different things are happening to them, but at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yeah, and that that human commonality is incredibly important to social interactions.
But that does tie into the last con here in a negative way, and it's also something that is something that folks should keep an eye on. And I think if people really realized how much they don't pay attention to this and how much of their personal information is out there, they may be a little shocked. But go ahead with the last con.
Okay, so that is social media increases privacy risks across the internet. Social media is a hotbed of privacy risks, including but not limited to phishing, data mining, malware sharing, and botnet attacks. Only 49% of Americans had any confidence that social media companies could protect their private information. The least amount of faith afforded the organizations and businesses that collect private data, including the federal government, cell phone service providers, and retailers. Moreover, while 74% indicated that control over shared private information was very important, only 9% felt they had a lot of control over the information. The Electronic Privacy Information Center, EPIC, argued the extraordinary growth of social media has given platforms extraordinary access and influence into the life of users. Social networking companies harvest sensitive data about individuals' activities, interests, personal characteristics, political views, purchasing habits, and online behaviors. In many cases, this data is used to algorithmically drive user engagement and to sell behavioral advertisement, often with distortive and discriminatory impacts. Further, as EPIC noted, tracking and behavioral advertising by social media companies is not limited to the platforms themselves. Firms like Facebook use hard-to-detect tracking techniques to follow individuals across a variety of apps, websites, and devices. As a result, even those who intentionally opt out of social media platforms are affected by their data collection and advertising practices. Thus, social media compromises everyone's data across the internet, including location information, health information, religious identity, sexual orientation, facial recognition imagery, private messages, personal photos, and more. Much of that information can be used for identity theft, in-person robbery, and any number of other crimes. And as noted above, the argument about cyberbullying, the release of such information could also result in stalking, outing LGBTQ people, and religious intolerance online. The information could also be used to influence opinions and spread information among vulnerable people.
Misinformation.
Yeah, spread misinformation among vulnerable people. Additionally, information gathered from social media can be used by insurers to deny health coverage or home insurance, businesses to deny employment, and others to make decisions. Okay, so I said the biggest thing is the echo chamber. That's what I think because I'm a very politically motivated person, but for a lot of people, privacy is a major concern. Many people have had their identity stolen, and those experiences are pretty horrific for the people who have to go through them. Because if you think about all of your electronic communications, all of your electronic platforms have been compromised.
Yeah, and part of the argument against TikTok is the issue about data mining. I mean, the other social media companies out there do it extensively, as the con here mentioned. Even if you don't have a Facebook account, there's still a chance that Facebook is somehow tracking other things about you. Your information is their business. The social media aspects of it don't really mean anything to them, in the grand scheme of things. So it is a valid issue to talk about. And like I mentioned at the top, when it came to TikTok, if there are concerns about data privacy, because think about it like this too, it could be something as simple as taking a picture at work, but on the back wall behind you, you have like a picture of a machine at work that is yet to debut yet. And what if another country, through data mining, were to get that picture, see that machine, give it to a similar organization in their country, and then they come up with it first.
I think that happens all the time.
But it's, yeah, and I mean, this is, with the tool that we have here, it's an imperfect tool. And I think it does have to be acknowledged that in order for it to be used in the way that we want, we are going to have to give up some information. And as a user, for the most part, I guess I've been able to be comfortable with that. But it's...
My attitude towards internet privacy, and I should say I've never had my identity stolen. So my opinion might change if that happened, of course. But my current opinion is that if somebody wants my information, they're going to be able to get it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is a guaranteed fact. If you went on the dark web, which is very much a thing, and go to the right spots to where you have information, people selling information, you can find your social security number listed. It's just, it boils down to money. There's a reason why I don't fear someone stealing my identity, because if they saw my credit, they're not going to go near me. That is just a fact.
Like, what do you got that they want? And that's kind of how I feel, too. Like, I just feel like I'm so small potatoes that nobody is interested in.
Yeah. Now, you have to be comfortable with the security that you choose for yourself, and you also have to be comfortable with the consequences. I met plenty of people when I worked at Apple that didn't want to deal with, the consequences of some of their actions in terms of privacy and whatnot. And, it sucks, but, it's the card you have to deal with. But, like I said, I think it is important for social media companies to err on the side of protecting their users' information. Look what happened to the mother who was having a private Facebook conversation with her 15-year-old daughter about the time that they were going to travel across state lines to get an abortion, and now that's in the public record, and the mother and the kid got arrested.
What state was that?
I think Ohio, not particularly sure, but if I find it, I can put it in the show's notes. But that is something that has already happened, and I'm sure they didn't think twice about, they just thought it was Facebook who's going to, react to their Facebook, without thinking that, could somebody be watching. Now, there are ways out there to protect yourself. Like that mother and her daughter could have used, Slack?
No, they could have used Slack. They could have used Discord. They could have used Signal.
Signal, that's what I was thinking of. The private messaging that's similar to Facebook Messenger, but it's secure. It's more than anything, I think, as a former computer repair technician myself, someone who had to deal with this stuff on a fairly regular basis, is just educate yourself on, some ways to protect yourself. Because, you're not, I wouldn't expect, with the amount of websites that everybody has to log into, that everybody's going to use a new password for each and every website. There are some that may.
Yeah, there's some that may have like a passcode key or something.
I mean, and there are programs that can help out with that, but they are programs, and if your phone dies and you need a password on something, you can't get to it.
Right.
It's just assess what your own security needs are and find out ways that you can protect yourself still. You don't have to have everything in lockdown to enjoy the internet because, the hackers, the people looking to steal information are going for the most lucrative victims they can find. They're not going to make money off the poor people.
Right. They're not going to be able to get anything from poor people.
No. Hopefully they will do like what Anonymous does and fucks around with government officials.
Yeah.
That's great. But anyway, I think that will wrap it up for us. Do you have any additional thoughts here on social media? What is your overall opinion? Do you think it is good for society, bad, in between?
I think a lot of it is bad for society. I think things like Facebook, Instagram are bad for society. They cause a terrible cough.
Fuckers.
Whereas I see Twitter and TikTok actually, with these very short messages, I see more political discourse on those platforms. I see more people putting their personal stuff out there on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. Honestly, like social media, like it has some benefits, which is why I have no problem, saying, come to our Facebook group, hang out with us, post in there. We'd love to hear from you if you do listen to the show. I do have a general just exhaustedness with social media at this point, though.
Yeah.
Like I love going through the TikTok videos. I hope TikTok doesn't get banned because, I love being able to, like that guy on TikTok who like adds voices to animals while they're doing stuff. And like there was one where they had like these two dogs fighting, and then the camera pulls over to another dog that's just staring like wide-eyed, and he did the voice of that dog, like, see, mama, I'm just standing right here, I'm not getting into a fight like they are, I'm just being a good dog right here. And I wouldn't have seen that. There's this amazing bagpipe player and the violin player that they make short little videos and whatnot that are great to watch. There's so much great stuff out there. People got to be discerning. Just be aware of what some of the consequences are in terms of how you could be affected, because even someone in my position could still be messed with in a very negative way, even if it's something as simple as forgetting a password or something like that. But just assess your dangers and what you're okay with giving up, but also too, on the other side, look into what Congress is doing here, folks, with the TikTok thing. This is not a case where we want the cooperation between the two parties. We need somebody to question what is going on here in terms of the TikTok ban. Because like the Restrict Act, apparently the law that's being proposed to ban it is apparently has more pages than the Homeland Security Act, and they're expecting people to like vote on this soon, I guess, which, is par for the course for how Congress runs. But it's just unfortunate that they have to vote on such important things without being able to have the time to read the fucking law in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. They just want to hear their own voices.
Yeah, and they want to be able to, I think as some of the information we're finding out, like with the Twitter hearings, they do want to be able to also control the narrative that is happening on social media platforms, because the government did have not daily, but just regular meetings with Twitter, talking about, hey, can you make sure this person doesn't get the amplification they need? Can you do this? Can you do that? They would have, accounts shut down just because, the person was saying information they were agreeing with. And we're not talking about, people of one political leaning. We're talking, it's verified stuff that, major groups from both sides were having their voices kind of shunted down just because the government didn't want the messages that these people were saying.
Interesting. One thing I heard today after the TikTok hearings was people have been seeing more depressing information than they were before the TikTok hearing on TikTok. So let's say you go to TikTok, you see like a funny magician, you see like a cow taking a nap or whatever. Instead of that, now what people are saying is like stories about dead dogs or stories about disasters. And so there was some speculation on Reddit that this was a way for the Chinese company to get back at Americans, was making them watch depressing videos.
I would not agree with that course, but I also don't think that company should be forced to sell to an American company.
Right. Like,
because what the fuck? I mean, it is xenophobic that they're...
global... It's essentially a global government through corpocracy.
Yeah. Which I got 2 words I can do. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here.
Okay, sounds great, Nerdy Tim.
Yeah, we definitely solved the problem here of social media. So it's done. Thank you all. You're welcome.
Yes, you're very welcome for our thrilling analysis of this social phenomenon.
Indeed. Episode 299 is in the books.
Join us next week for episode 300.
Indeed. Number 4. I may have thrown it in a couple more times, but I did cut back on the Indeeds today.
You did. You really did. I'm proud of you.
All right.
Or as you would say, indeed.
Hey now. Be sure to check out the new Tim's Tremendous Tapes. This week we finally got around, since Tim is me, I finally got around to featuring A Week of the Blues.
Nice. So getting back to the roots.
Yep, and that was an interesting trip. I don't know what I'm going to listen to next week. I'll have to think about it.
Anybody got any ideas? Just pop by our Facebook group and let us know what you think Tim should focus on in the next 10 Tremendous Tapes.
Yep, and then Aubrey will reflect on interacting with such a horrible system.
I will.
Yes.
I was telling Tim earlier, I use Facebook for events, and I find it very hard to find the same information I can get on Facebook about things that are happening around town anywhere else.
Yeah. And for me, I mainly, my main 3 are Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I just primarily use it for, TikTok, making silly videos. I'll do occasional stupid, silly videos that make me laugh. But the other 2 just mainly show promotion. And even then, it feels like I'm screaming into the void.
Yeah.
And so my experience with social media right now is a little different than it was. But I'm not complaining at all either. I'm getting what I can out of it, and you can too, ladies and gentlemen. You can too. Thank you all for listening. Each Saturday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
See you later, folks.
All right. Now, how does this computer work again?
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.